Thank you. Can we go to item 1, please? Apologies.
Yes, Chairman, I've received apologies from Councillors David Beanie, Roger Knight and Charles Woodgate.
Thank you. And the appointment of substitutes?
Yes, Chairman, we have Councillor Martin Bates for Councillor Beanie, Councillor Oliver Richardson for Councillor Knight and Councillor Martin Porter for Councillor Woodgate.
Can I welcome all those super subs to the committee? Item 3, declarations of interest, please. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in item 5. I've registered to speak against the item and therefore I will withdraw from the chamber until I'm requested to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is the minutes. To confirm our minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of February. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor. And thank you, Councillor Back. Do we all agree? Thank you. We now come to item 5, which is the application number 25/00133, the land west of Aylsham Road and south of Spinney Lane, Aylsham. And if I could hand over to our planning officer, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. So this is an outline application with all matters reserved for consideration except for access for development comprising residential units as well as flexible non-residential floor space with associated infrastructure and incidental works. The site is allocated for development within the local plan under policy SAP 24, and this is discussed in the principle of development section in the committee report. Whilst the estimated capacity in the plan was for 640 dwellings, within the entire site comprising developable area, the environmental statement and indicative plan submitted with this outline application are considered to demonstrate how up to 800 dwellings could be accommodated at the site, whilst providing a substantial area of open space. Further details of the siting, scale, layout and appearance of development would be set out in the reserved matter submissions if this outline application is granted. However, parameter plans have been provided to give further detail on this, and an assessment of the material considerations is set out in the report. So on the left-hand side is the site location plan with the site outlined in red. It's located to the south of Aylsham. Spinney Road runs along the north of the site and Aylsham Road runs along the east side through the site. The image on the right-hand side is the illustrative master plan, which shows how the development could be arranged, providing a primary street which would be served by the bus, green corridors running through the site, connecting with crossings to provide access to the main village, a mixed-use local centre, including up to 1,100 square metres of commercial floor space, as well as an extensive open space, including a village green, community orchards and gardens, allotments, enhanced public rights of way through the site, as well as pedestrian and cycle paths and kickabout and play areas. As an update to members, the committee report includes a summary of the points raised by consultees, which can all be viewed in full in the online planning file. In Aylsham Parish Council's most recent representation, whilst a number of the matters had been addressed through amendments, they remain concerned regarding sewage capacity, public transport and connectivity to the bus service, the speed limit on Aylsham Road, the width and suitability of Spinney Lane and the location of the mixed-use retail centre, as well as the comments from Active Travel England and in relation to an updated climate change assessment. So in response to these points, regarding sewage capacity, it's suggested in the report that a condition for phasing plan is submitted. This would enable occupancy of the development to be aligned with the works to provide that capacity that's needed. And Southern Water have been aware of the application through the local plan process. So the public transport is also addressed in the report, and a contribution was requested by KCC, which would go towards bus services, and a main route through the site is shown later in this presentation. Speed limits have also been subject to consultation with KCC, as well as off-site highway works, and will be subject to traffic regulation orders or Section 278 agreements, as well as suggested to be secured by condition. The area within the site for the mixed-use centre was increased during the course of the application to allow some greater flexibility in terms of where the main buildings would be located, and this is discussed in the report and in the presentation. Linked to this, the agents are in discussions with KCC on the proposed combined cycle and pedestrian access improvements on Dorman Avenue South, which are expected to be incorporating the comments made by Active Travel England. And in relation to climate change and sustainability, measures are set out in the design code, and it's expected that the reserve matters would include further details of exactly what measures would be implemented as the development is built out. So these are some photographs of the site. The top left photo is from within the site looking at Ackholt House, which is discussed in the heritage section and is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset. The bottom left photo is an existing access gate at the northeast corner of the site, looking southwest across the sloping landscape with Ackholt Wood just visible on the left-hand side of the image, and that is the ancient woodland discussed in the report, where there's a condition suggested for a buffer scheme to detail that. The photo on the right is from within the southern half of the site, one of the lowest points looking northwards. This shows the sloping site topography, and you can see the existing hedgerow, which can be accommodated within the layout suggested, and the existing dwellings and leisure and welfare centre that are on the top of Spinney Lane. So these are some of the parameter plans that have been submitted and would inform the reserve matter submissions if this outline permission is granted. The top left is the indicative density parameter plan, which is discussed further in the committee report. However, focuses the highest density in the centre of the site, shown in the darker red colours, with reduced density towards the edges and open space, shown by lighter colours. And the density would range from between 32 to 42.5 dwellings per hectare, which accords with policy PM1 that considers a range between 30 to 50 dwellings per hectare is appropriate, and this density is comparable to other newer areas of Aylsham. The bottom left parameter plan details building heights, again focusing the tallest elements of up to 3 stories in the centre of the site and reducing down to 2 stories at the edges of the site. The top right plan shows the proposed access points with the primary vehicular access and pedestrian and cycle access roads indicated by blue arrows, and pedestrian crossings indicated by pink circles. This also demonstrates the developable area would safeguard the existing public rights of way and bridle way running through the site, and there's a condition suggested for details of enhancements for these to be submitted. And the bottom right parameter plan shows green infrastructure within the site with central green corridor connecting the open space to the south through the centre of the site with the play area and village green, and north towards Dorman Avenue where the footpath upgrades would be proposed. This would provide the improved connection with the rest of the village further north. So on the left is the indicative phasing plan that's been submitted. This shows the areas in red intended to be brought forward first, and this would include a large area of the open space, which would almost also accommodate biodiversity net gain, as well as the main access points into the site, which would be subsequently connected via the main road. And this is indicated to be included in the second phase, which will also include the parcel on the east of Aylsham Road and the remaining large area of the open space to the south. This is further detailed on the plan at the bottom right side, which shows the primary street that would go through the site and would be served by the bus. On the top right side of this slide is the land use parameter plan. So this shows the green infrastructure, the residential areas in yellow, and the wider mixed use area in the centre in hatching, which would include both residential uses and the mixed use local centre. These show some of the proposed highway works. So the top left image shows the new access point at the north of the site onto Spinney Lane, opposite the land at the Welfare and Leisure Centre. And the top right plan shows the proposed junction improvements near the northeast corner of the site at the junction of Spinney Lane and Aylsham Road to rationalise this and improve pedestrian access. The bottom left image, which is not aligned to north, shows the proposed accesses on Aylsham Road, serving the eastern parcel of the site, and to the main part of the site as well. And the bottom right plan shows off-site highway works further west on Spinney Lane, where the road alignment will be improved at the junction with Addisham Road. So the transport statement and addendum also detail these works, including the speed rationalisation in the surrounding area to reduce speed limits near the site, and that's also detailed in the committee report. These are some extracts from the design code that's been submitted and has been subject to amendments throughout the course of the application. This is intended to inform the detailed design of the reserve matter submissions. And as suggested in the report, a condition is suggested where we would look for a report to accompany reserve matters to demonstrate how they've had regard to this design code and the developer checklist to ensure that the high quality submissions that are envisaged through this outline application are brought forwards. So other material considerations are discussed in detail in the report, including visual amenity, landscape impact, residential amenity, travel, parking, flooding, drainage, and other matters. And it's considered that all of these can be made acceptable by way of the suggested conditions and a legal agreement dealing with open space, biodiversity net gain, public rights of way, and financial contributions, which are discussed in the committee report. So overall, this would provide up to 800 dwellings, 30% affordable housing, and financial contributions towards infrastructure in the local area. Whilst the layout and scale and appearance and landscaping would be dealt with at reserve matter stage, it's considered the proposals could be accommodated at this allocated site in a way that would accord with policy and have an acceptable impact on all those material considerations. And therefore, it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers to oppose this application, and as a result, the supporter who is speaking for this application will receive 3 times 3 minutes to ensure fairness. And can I ask the first speaker to object, who's Councillor David Fleck, please, if you could come forward.
Chair, members, before I begin, I need to correct a material point in the officer's report. The report states that Aylsham raises no objection. However, following the revised submission, the Parish Council submitted a formal objection in December 2025, which remains our position. It's therefore important that members understand that the parish is not neutral on this application as it stands. The Parish Council is engaged constructively with the proposal throughout its evolution. We recognise that the application has made a number of positive amendments in response to earlier feedback. These are welcome steps. However, significant and material concerns remain unresolved, and for that reason we maintain our objection. I will highlight the critical areas. First, Active Travel England, a statutory consultee, has confirmed it is not in a position to support this application. The scheme does not yet demonstrate compliance with national guidance. Proceeding in the absence of a resolved statutory objection presents a clear policy and procedural risk. Second, there is no updated climate change assessment accompanying the revised proposals. As a result, the development does not demonstrate compliance with local plan policies on climate mitigation and adaptation, and key measures such as renewable energy integration, water reuse and long-term resilience remain not sufficiently addressed. Third, infrastructure capacity. There are well-documented existing issues within the parish, and both the Environment Agency and Southern Water have raised concerns. At present, there is no robust assurance that the water and waste systems can accommodate development at this scale. Fourth, the transport strategy does not reflect how Aylsham residents actually travel. Our community depends on direct, reliable connection to Dover and Canterbury for work, education and healthcare. The current proposals do not prioritise strengthening these existing routes, which risks increasing car dependency rather than reducing it. Fifth, highway safety and access, particularly Spinney Lane. In its current form, it's not suitable to accommodate the level of traffic anticipated, and further detailed assessment and mitigation are essential. Members, this is not the case of the parish council opposing development in principle. We want to see sustainable, well-integrated growth that benefits both existing and future residents. As it stands, this application does not yet demonstrate that this is safe, policy compliant or deliverable without unacceptable impacts. For these reasons, the parish council respectfully asks that the planning permission is not granted at this stage and that the applicant is required to address these fundamental issues in full before any approval is considered. Thank you.
The second speaker is Councillor Pout.
Good evening, officers, councillors. Thank you for your time this evening. You may have noticed that on the 23rd of March 2025, I submitted a letter of objection on this item, and I'd like to elaborate on those points. I'm not opposed to house building, and indeed I'm very supportive of the need for social housing and new homes in my ward, the place that I live. I have met extensively with the team behind this plan, as I've worked extensively on the current Elsham development for many years as a parish and district councillor to make the most of what many would consider a bad situation. There are a number of outstanding issues I'd like you to consider. This development is part of SAP 24 of the local plan and so is an allocated site. The estimated number of dwellings was 640. There was a plan for a North Elsham site which was removed before the final local plan draft, as the indicative capacity would have been overbearing. It seems most of that capacity has simply shifted to this site in South Elsham. In my original letter, I noted my gratitude at Highways improvements to the local area. Point G5 of SAP 24 states that an assessment of the impacts of the proposed development on the surrounding rural road network must happen, and subsequently Spinney Lane will have speed restrictions. Great news. But this road is very narrow immediately after the industrial estate, with cars often having to slam on their brakes to avoid collisions. Currently, the road condition is so poor there is only space for one car as the road slowly crumbles away at the sides. Many goods vehicles use this road, and clearly many more vehicle movements will occur with 800 new dwellings. There's no opportunity to widen this road. The junction with the B2046 Addisham Road, you saw the drawings, has changed designs a number of times since I've lived in Elsham, and it's still dangerous. On a daily basis, when I use this road, I have to brake sharply as cars pull out with very limited visibility on a tight bend. It's not their fault, it's poorly designed. The plan is to move the junction over ever so slightly. Do we honestly believe having it one lane width further along will really make things better? I'm doubtful. SAP 24H states there must be a minimum 10% modal shift in sustainable transport. Some cycle lanes are a welcome addition. The 89 bus will be rerouted, a bus that does not allow anyone to go out or work late at night or work on a Sunday. This will not be improved. And so do we really expect modal shift? The development will install some bike storage at the train station. It will make neither Elsham or Snowdown stations accessible. Disabled people, older people, parents still can't use these train stations. As per the last development, this plan will create lots of houses, lots of disruption and offer local people nothing in return. Look carefully at SAP 24 and think carefully for yourself. Is it truly compliant in its current state? I urge you to reject this application. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. And our third speaker objecting to this application is Mr. Stephen House. If you could come forward, please. Mr. House? In the absence of Mr. House, I'd like Ms. Jessica McSweeney to come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Jessica McSweeney. I'm from Carter Jonas and I'm the planning consultant for the joint applicants, Access Land Partnerships and trustees of the Lord Fitzwalter. The application before you this evening represents the culmination of 9 years of work to promote the land to the south of Aylsham for development. The landowner first met with the council's planning policy team in 2017 to discuss the site's potential credentials as a residential-led extension to Aylsham. Initial studies were undertaken to show where on-site residential development parcels might be located, how pedestrian and vehicular movements would work, and how development might be phased. More detailed master planning and highways work was undertaken in the run-up to the local plans examination in public, as well as engagement with Kent County Council's highways team. This initial work to support the local plan process demonstrated that the site could comfortably accommodate 640 dwellings, as well as the associated local centre and amenities. This number was largely based on calculations associated with the site area and topography. In parallel with adoption of the local plan, a full technical team of consultants was appointed to prepare the work associated with an outline application on this site. This included highways modelling, archaeological trial trenching, drainage modelling, tree surveys, ecological surveys, as well as landscape and visual impact work. These studies informed where built development is best suited on the site, and the master plan for the site evolved accordingly. It became clear that the site's capacity is far in excess of the estimated 640 dwellings referenced in the site allocation policy. The site has the ability to accommodate a range of densities which reflect the existing urban form of Aylsham. This would yield 800 homes and is considered that this would constitute a more appropriate development that better reflects the guidance of the NPPF to avoid low density development, as well as reducing the potential requirement for other more sensitive sites to come forward for housing. This approach and justification for increased number of dwellings has been discussed and accepted with officers. As well as extensive engagement with officers of the council throughout the local plan and application process, the applicants have undertaken a wide range of engagement prior to and post submission of the application. This has included meeting the council's design review panel, local parish councils and community groups. In addition, 2 public consultation events were held prior to the submission of the application. As the application is an outline with all matters reserved aside from access, which has been submitted in detail, extensive meetings have also been held with consultees, including Kent County Council Highways, National Highways and Stagecoach. Following the submission of the application in February last year, the feedback received as part of the statutory consultation, a number of amendments were made to the application. This included the removal of a residential development area parcel to allow for drainage infrastructure, revisions to the density parameter plan to allow this drainage area to come forward, additional flexibility on the location of the local centre, and this amendment responds to parish council feedback whilst also reflecting advice from potential operators regarding accessibility and visibility of the local centre, preparation of a standalone design code, inclusion of a dedicated climate change chapter within the environmental statement, strengthening the assessment of climate mitigation and adaptation methods, highways and transport amendments arising from ongoing engagement with Kent County Council highways and detailed modelling. And these included replacement of the originally proposed Puffin crossing with a toucan crossing on Spinney Lane, provision of a new footway and cycleway along Dorman Avenue South following multiple iterations in response to KCC and Active Travel England feedback, introduction of a right turn storage lane on Adsham Road and Spinney Lane Junction, bus overrun facilities at site access points, and reduced speed limits on roads surrounding the site to improve highway safety. The application has responded to all policy requirements and feedback received as part of the pre- and post-submission consultation process, and the result is an outline application which comprises extensive benefits. These include the delivery of up to 800 much-needed new private and affordable homes with a variety of types and sizes appropriate to the location, helping to meet the district's housing need in circumstances where the NPPF now places a greater focus on housing delivery. A new local centre providing 1,100 square metres of mixed-use floor space, including a convenience food store to complement existing facilities within Aylsham, and potential community space supporting both employment generation and day-to-day needs of residents. Provision of new play space, which will be accessible to all, including new residents as well as existing neighbouring residents. Extensive new open space, including parks and gardens, amenity green space, allotments, as well as natural and semi-natural green space. Improved connectivity with new vehicular, pedestrian and cycle access points from Spinney Lane and Aylsham Road. and enhanced infrastructure for walking, cycling, public transport and vehicles both within and around the site, enhanced road safety achieved through reduced speed limits on surrounding roads, improved safety on the surrounding road network as a result of the proposed reduced speed limits and upgraded junctions and crossing arrangements, significant biodiversity improvements with enhanced green spaces and landscaping to achieve approximately just under 50% biodiversity net gain in habitat units and over 47% in hedgerow units, and this is substantially in excess of the 10% statutory requirement. And also improvements to public transport connectivity with the inclusion of the extension to the number 89 bus service between Canterbury, Wingham and Sandwich. In addition to these benefits, the development will deliver financial contributions in excess of £14 million towards off-site infrastructure in line with the infrastructure delivery plan. In summary, the proposed development has the potential to deliver a highly sustainable extension to the existing settlement of Aylsham, assisting with housing delivery, placemaking and enhanced infrastructure. Thank you for your time, and we strongly encourage members to support the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you for your presentation and for reducing the amount of time that you needed. It was appreciated. Before I open the discussion up to the committee, can I just ask, in paragraph 2.15, in the middle, it's suggested a condition is imposed requiring the reserved matters to be accompanied by information demonstrating how regard has been made to the design code, and you mentioned that, but the end of that sentence relates to sustainability. Now, I've associated that phrase with condition number 7, but condition number 7 doesn't include anything on sustainability. So could you please clarify?
Thank you. So yes, as I mentioned in the presentation, we are suggesting that as a condition imposed for a report to accompany the reserved matters to sort of demonstrate how they accord with both the parameter plans and the design code that's been submitted. So at this outline stage, there are the details of what sustainability measures would be incorporated are not finalised. There are a number of suggestions within the design code and also set out in the environmental statement addendum, which addresses the additional climate change chapter. But we would expect that to be further detailed with the reserved matter submissions when a developer is known and the site layout is set.
Thank you. The Councillor Cronk.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of key points. The bridleway is quite narrow on that road, which is a busy road. I was wondering that could be upgraded to a Pelican light crossing. The speed limit and safety measures, there's a load of speed and safety measures put in place. Would there be any enforcement cameras in that road to make that safer along that road, because it's quite a busy road? The HGV traffic impact, now that has an impact on the speed of the lorries going up and down, and also it concerns me with the bridle crossing, with the bridle horses going across, with heavy lorries going across as well. That's why I've asked about that, and also about the water drainage and surface subs. What the implications that's going to be put into, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So if I could comment on the bridleway. So there is a bridleway crossing on Aylsham Road. The KCC Public Rights of Way team originally requested that there were upgrades to this crossing to provide sort of better access, but unfortunately due to the actual the size of the road and the amount of land within the control of both the applicant and the Highways Authority, it's not possible to provide a crossing. But KCC have been made aware of this, and they are satisfied that actually the upgrades within the site, which could include improved signage as well as they're already off-site highway works to slow down the speed of vehicles, they're satisfied that that would be sufficient in this case. In terms of the query about enforcement cameras, we don't believe that that will be included at this stage. The speed reduction and the off-site highway works have been discussed with KCC Highways, so that might be something that the applicant could discuss with them further, but at this stage that's not, as far as my understanding is, planned as part of that work.
Councillor Plonk, do you want to come back on that at all?
About, and also the HGV impact on the road itself, up and down the road, and the water drainage and surface subs, what that's going to be impact on. I know you got it on the conditions, but I just want the impact of that, please.
Apologies for missing those points. Yes, in terms of the surface water drainage, so the scheme has been amended following further modelling, as the agent discussed, and we do have conditions suggested by some of the consultees, and one of them would ensure that basically the reserve matters needs to demonstrate there's sufficient capacity to deal with the most serious flood events. So the reserve matters would have to demonstrate that whilst they're submitted, and we would also then further consult the relevant bodies on those details as they come in. There are also conditions for a scheme of surface water drainage to be submitted, as well as the means of foul sewage disposal. So those conditions would fully address those matters.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair. I've only got 4 questions, you'd be pleased to know. The first is in relation to the indicative capacity, which under the SAP 24 is given as 640 dwellings. This has already been mentioned, and yet the application seeks up to 800 dwellings, which is about 25% above what the indicative capacity indicated under the local plan. So what material considerations justify this uplift, and how have the additional impacts been fully assessed and mitigated? That's question 1. On question 2, it's a small one about the Accold wood protection, which will be a buffer between the new developments and the wood. How large will that buffer actually be in terms of the distance from the actual start of the properties? A third one is on 106 contributions, particularly in relation to bus services, which I note are sort of itemised for the 89 service. I'm just wondering if whether or not any consideration has been given to extending it to the 92 bus service, which is the current rural service that runs from Elsham through the old colliery villages to Whitfield. It was once known as the Stagecoach Connect, which is struggling to attain enough sustainability in terms of income, but has incredible importance socially with the type of passengers who actually use it. And my final question is in relation to the fact that most of the issues that are being discussed will have to be our reserved matters. And under our current constitution, a reserved matters application will not be permitted to come back to the planning committee. And it's quite apparent from reading the planning portal that there's a lot of objection within the community to this application, and therefore I feel that it should come back. Now, having taken into account what is happening in terms of the Planning and Building Infrastructure Bill, it's quite noticeable that the current consultation that's going on in terms of the National Scheme of Delegations has introduced a change to what had previously been put in the draft that came before us in May, so that large developments which are phased builds can go through a gateway test in order to be submitted to Schedule 2 and therefore consideration within the planning committee. And in this circumstance, I would like some assurance from planning services that this application will be given serious consideration for a return to the planning committee once the reserved matters is ready to be put towards us. Thank you. That's my questions.
Councillor Bates, before I hand over to planning officer, I've already been in some communication with the head of planning regarding the gateway. You will know how it's established, and so I have put in train appropriate contacts in order for the gateway to be quite clear, visible and transparent, and I'm sure I shall be coming back to the committee one way or another in relation to that. So I hope that that gives you some confidence about how the gateway will be employed. But I want to hand over to the planning officer before coming back to you.
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the indicative capacity and the additional impacts, as we've set out in the report, the indicative capacity was 640 dwellings. Looking at the local plan and the map that accompanies that, that does show the majority of the site is indicative development area, apart from the woodland and the buffer, and it does show the employment allocation to the northeast of that. But this scheme actually manages to deliver up to 800 houses with a substantial area of open space. And based on the environmental statement chapters that have been submitted in detail, matters regarding sort of noise and vibration, archaeology, heritage, socioeconomics and health in more detail than we would have for sort of smaller housing applications. So we do consider that the material considerations have been fully addressed, and we do have enough information to consider those impacts, and that the mitigation we would secure and the conditions we're suggesting would fully address those, as well as obviously reviewing all those factors again as the reserve matters submissions do come in. In terms of the Accolt Wood buffer, the policy requires a minimum of 20 metres. We have been in discussions with both the Tree and Horticulture Officer and the Senior Natural Environment Officer on what the detail of that buffer should look like to ensure that it does sort of restrict access into the ancient woodland, to ensure that it does meet the aims of being ancient woodland and isn't disturbed by residents. That could include sort of boundary treatments to dissuade access, as well as planting, but that would be a minimum of 20 metres in accordance with policy. In terms of the bus services, the upgrades, well, the contribution was requested by KCC Highways, and that was in consultation with Stagecoach, who have been reviewing sort of the number of users of those services, and that is the service they've suggested is upgraded. If that service were to change or the route be amended, the Section 106 legal agreement wording would be worded to sort of allow that money to be used to an alternative service that would still serve the residents of Aylsham. In terms of the reserve matters, and coming back to the committee, I'll pass over to my colleague Luke on that.
Thank you. I think sort of in addition to what's been said, obviously at the moment we do have the scheme of delegation as written, which only requires that, or it doesn't require that reserve matters come back. So I think Councillor Bates is absolutely right on that point. What we have done on some of the sort of larger significant applications is particularly where councillors sort of express concern about the sort of strategic applications being determined without the sort of oversight of planning committee, is to bring those back to committee. I think there's a few applications at Whitfield, for example, that we have brought to planning committee. So whilst I can't sort of guarantee that they would be coming back to committee, what I would say is that members would be able to speak to the head of planning and request that further sort of reserve matters do come before the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Bates.
Thanks. Yes, thanks for sort of clarifying that, Luke. I am aware that there have in the past that there is this arrangement whereby the head of planning can get together with the chair and consider applications of that particular nature, and I feel that this falls in with that. And then in fact what is proposed within the national scheme of delegations does actually parallel that's that's position that we have at the moment. So in this particular case, I'm just wondering if the minutes could be noted that once it goes to reserve matters, that this application should be considered strongly for a return to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Before I go to Councillor Nee, Luke, would you want to? Councillor Nee.
Thank you, Chair. Before I come to my questions, the question of reserved matters, all councillors get a list of applications that come in, and I'd say it's incumbent upon us as responsible councillors to look at that, and if there is an application with reserved matters coming in that's of interest to us, to actually read the portal documents and actually raise queries at the appropriate time. So to my comments, first of all, condition 17 is addressing or attempting to address the confirmed lack of sewerage capacity, and the wording says that it is the delivery of any required sewage network reinforcement. Now, that's not a precise statement. Any has got a spread from 0 to 100%. So who defines the any within this condition? And where I'm coming to with this is what I don't want to see in the future is that the capacity remains compromised, which I suspect it will do, but that's only a guess. But if it does remain compromised, can we put a condition on this scheme that tankering off of foul waste will not be permitted, that it can only ever be off-site through the sewage system by a direct connection? Secondly, biodiversity net gain is very important to us. Within the comments from our DCC officers, including the Senior Natural Environment Officer, they commented in their response that we should consider a bond to cover the 30 years BNG. This is something I've raised before. For the BNG to be successful, it needs to be managed and maintained. A responsible developer will do that, but not all developers are responsible, and secondly, not all developers are still in business 30 years after the event. So I would like to see, and I don't know where it would sit, our legals will advise no doubt, but I wondered within the section 106 whether there is a requirement for a bond to be entered into to protect the future for the BNG. And my final point is, when a statutory consultee can't agree to a scheme, when do we choose to ignore them? Because Active Travel have been very clear that they can't support this application. So if we are to give planning permission, then we are actively ignoring the fact that they can't support it. And the bus has already been mentioned. I won't go into there. I can't see, and I agree with the Active Travel England's comment, is that they're looking for a modal shift from car, and we're not seeing that there, and they can't support it. So my 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the condition 17, Southern Water can take up to sort of 24 months to actually plan the works that they need to provide sort of capacity. So they have been aware of the application through the local plan process, but they don't normally start this until an application's actually in, unfortunately, to ensure that it is actually going to be built out. The condition they've suggested is for the occupation of the development to be phased and implemented to align with their capacity or works, basically. So what we'd be doing is we'd be expecting a phasing plan to be submitted, and we would then be signing off on each sort of phase coming forwards once we know that there is capacity for those to connect, so that the occupancy would be linked to there definitely being capacity. You wouldn't have people occupying the units before there is that capacity available. But your suggestion for a condition that foul tankering is not permitted is something we can certainly look into as part of that. In terms of the biodiversity net gain, or BNG, the bond in the section 106, that is something that's sort of quite new. It hasn't come up much yet. I mean, we are still fairly early days in terms of BNG, but it is something we've discussed with the agent, and they were broadly agreeable to that in principle. I think at the moment, one of the sort of unknowns is what the cost of that would be, because we wouldn't know the complexity of the habitats that are being created and enhanced until probably the first reserve matter submission, because we're expecting a large proportion of the bud of SC net gain to be within that open space area, which is expected in the first sort of phase of the development. But that's certainly something we can look to pursue, and that will probably be through the section 106. And it might be that we word that to require that to be sort of investigated further with that first reserve matter submission when we do have that extra detail. In terms of the active travel England comments, as I've set out in the report, the developers are working with KCC Highways to review the upgrades to Dorman Avenue South. It is expected that that will incorporate all of the suggestions from Active Travel England, but they're still subject to some safety assessments at the moment. So that's why it's not quite finalised yet, but it is expected that that will incorporate those suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, do you want to come back on that before I go to Councillor Back?
Thank you. So I'm minded to say to move that we accept the officer's recommendation for this development. With, I suggest, a condition, not just that foul tankering is not permitted, but all foul waste is taken off through the sewage system. We are early days on BNG, but at some point we've got to work out how we're going to preserve it. We've got a DCC officer who is recommending it. I would like to see that as part of the section 106. I get that it's a movable feast in terms of how it's going to work, but if it's there, at least we achieve it. The developer is inevitably going to be on site till they complete or nearly complete the scheme, so we've got plenty of time to finalise that as we're working through it. Because of the location of the site, because of the road network, you're not going to get a full modal shift from cars here. We've just got to accept that cars and car travel will increase in the immediate area if we give the permission. We talk about weight, you've got to apply weight to it. They're close to a major road network, so just have to accept that. So with the addition of the waste and the BNG, I move that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Nottington Parish Council state cumulative effect, not a planning concern. KCC Highways, no objection. Site is in the local plan, so satisfies SAP 24. We'll get 240 affordable houses. I can remember the times when all we got was a viability statement saying they couldn't afford it. Moving on to sewage, I can remember the days with phase 1A. Legally, the developer is allowed to connect to Southern Water's network. They are not allowed to put anybody in the properties until Southern Water sign it off. Now, if we're saying that Southern Water's network has a job to cope now, I don't understand how, even if we phase it, how are they going to take the extra sewage from 800 houses without upgrading that pipework to a bigger dimension, which is what should have happened in Sandwich Road. And we had spillage all over Sandwich Road in people's showers. So we need to get this addressed. But by the way, I am seconding Councillor Nee's motion. Your motion, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Back. We have a response.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. I think with phase 1A, it didn't work. I think we've done a lot of work since then with Southern Water, refined the conditions, and I think really what the I think it's standard wording that we've used in the sort of short form condition, but in effect we are saying exactly what you've said. So it prevents occupation until the pipe work is in the ground and suitable to meet the needs of the development. So yeah, it prevents that occupation which would otherwise be acceptable under the Water Industries Act. It's the planning condition which prevents that occupation, I say, until the physical infrastructure is in place and able to cope.
Can I come back, Chair?
I was just about to ask.
We had this similar condition on phase 1A. You had similar condition in Deal in South Road, and they still occupied. So we can have the condition, but it's how are we going to make it safer and make sure that they actually do not put people in those properties?
Thank you. So again, I think there have been instances in the past where the conditions haven't been tightly worded enough, and we've amended the conditions as a result of that. The other area that we can improve is within the section 106, we can require that the applicant notifies us at certain occupation points. So we can put those sort of hard and fast requirements in that mean that we know exactly how many properties are being occupied at any point and exactly what needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back, and thank you. That's very helpful. Before I go to Councillor Lee, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few comments and questions. Schools. We've got 700 houses with 2 bedrooms or more. If each of those houses had 1 child at primary school level, that would constitute a whole new primary school. Can you explain what, if the children, if the existing primary schools in Aylsham are big enough to take the number of children expected from these 700 houses, and with secondary schools, I'm concerned. Again, there will be a lot of children at secondary school age over the years. They're travelling large distances to secondary schools: Deal, Dover, Sandwich, Canterbury. Is there anything we can do about that? There'll be a lot of travelling by either buses or cars or whatever for that. I'm concerned about school provision there. Second point, access to GP services. I can see that we've got no problem with funding for the buildings because that's part of S106. My concern is, will we be able to get GPs? Because GPs don't seem to like to come to East Kent. What happens if we can't get one? Third thing, there have been some comments about sports pitches and changing rooms not yet built following the Rattling Road development. For this application, could we set triggers on, let's say, a certain number of houses being built, and then things like the sports pitches, etc., being built or at least started? And my fourth point is about M43 properties. 5% of 800 is 40 houses, which should be M43. I presume these will be mainly in the affordable use category. Can we ask for purpose designed M43 houses rather than just clumsy conversions of a standard house? And also a comment, in which phases will these houses be distributed, or will they all be left to the end? Thank you.
Going back to Councillor Williams's point, I'm minded to think when it comes to things like GPs, which we can't control, and school provision, which is in the hands of KCC, is it worthwhile making any further representation to KCC on this point? But the other sort of thing matters regarding the trigger in relation, I think, may be required to be answered.
Thank you. So as set out in the table just after paragraph 2.82 of the committee report, which is page 66, we are seeking to secure financial contributions towards primary education expansion. So that's the expansion of primary schools in the Aylsham primary planning group, as well as secondary education expansion, which is for secondary schools in Deal and Sandwich, non-selective, and Dover district selective planning groups. So this is a request that's come from KCC. They haven't raised any concerns in terms of capacity. They have requested those contributions. They've also requested contributions for SEND provision as well as other sort of local provision like community learning and skills and integrated children's services and other matters that are set out in the report. In terms of the sports pitches and changing rooms, that's also discussed in that table. So there is a request that's come in from our planning policy team for sports halls contribution. So that would be towards the planned expansion improvements to the Elsham Welfare and Leisure Centre, or an alternative sort of strategic sports hall project in the area, as well as ongoing maintenance. And the leisure centre, as you can see on this indicative plan, is actually just located to the north of the site. So it will be serving both the existing residents that use that site as well as the proposed residents. And in terms of the M43, we're expecting that, yes, that would be provided within the affordable units. And this stage, we don't have specific details about how many houses would be provided within each phase of the development. That's something that would come through the reserve matter submissions, but it's also something that would be secured in the Section 106 legal agreement to ensure that we do get that provision that's required by policy.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just to have some assurance on the drainage. I've done 2 developments in my time where we made an arrangement with Southern Water, where we, in essence, created super tanks, and we discharged the sewage overnight on a timer from between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. So there's ways around it without, because I think a lot of people are imagining if Southern Water's got a 15-inch pipe, it's got to be a 20-inch pipe. There are imaginative solutions around it, which is why I come back to I don't want to see tankering on this particular site.
Thank you for that point, Councillor Lee. Councillor Back, and after Councillor Back, we'll be going to the vote.
I'm an expert on sewage. We've got a tank that holds the sewage of 2,000 properties in Whitfield. We've given permission for 6,000, so we've got another 2 on route. Every now and again, quite often, they empty that tank with tankers. They don't drip feed it at night, which is what they're supposed to do, but on a regular, but I'm talking regular basis, they empty those tanks or that tank with tankers. So
thank you, Councillor Back. That point is noted, but we have a motion, and if I can ask our Democratic Services Officer to read us back that motion.
Yes, Chairman, there is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded, and that's in accordance with the report recommendation, but with an additional condition relating to foul waste being taken or disposed of through the sewage system, not tanked off. And there was also a reference to BNG, which I'm not quite sure whether that was an extra condition or just an amendment to an existing condition. In the legal agreement, yeah, okay. So if you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain. If this motion fails to attract a majority of votes, the application will not have been determined and another motion and vote will be required. If I can ask Gemma to start the electronic vote and for members to cast their votes. We have 9 votes in favour of the motion, so that application has been approved, and that motion has been carried, and the application has been approved.
We now come to agenda item number 6, which is number 26/00109, Car Free Upper Street in Kingsdown. And if I can hand that over to our planning officer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for the erection of a replacement dwelling and swimming pool with associated outbuildings and works, including a air source heat pump, solar panels, pergola, landscaping and a swimming pool. This slide shows the existing block plan of the site and the surrounding pattern of development and satellite imagery of the site. This part of Upper Street is characterised by larger, predominantly detached dwellings of varied designs, set within large plots with a high degree of vegetation and landscaping to boundaries and gardens. This slide shows a proposed site layout plan. The proposed dwelling would roughly align with the front building line of the adjacent neighbour to the east, as you can see in this location, and comprises a linear form. The proposed dwelling is a large depth, however, it's not considered to be disproportionate to the size of the plot. This slide shows the proposed street scene to Upper Street. The dwelling comprises a low two-storey height with a low ridge height. The eaves height of the proposed dwelling would roughly align with the ridge height of the adjacent dwellings to the east, as you can see, and the ridge height would roughly align with the height of the adjacent dwellings to the west, and the dwelling would be set considerably down from High Banks, which is to the rear of the site. This slide shows the proposed east and west street scenes and the proposed floor plans. Here are some photos of the site. So this photo shows the existing bungalow and its relationship with the adjacent neighbours. This is the adjacent neighbour to the east, and this is the adjacent neighbour to the west, and just shows the land level changes in the vicinity of the site. And this photo shows the existing bungalow and its relationship with the adjacent neighbour to the east. The proposed dwelling is roughly is proposed to be pulled forward in the plot and to be roughly located in this position. This photo shows the relationship with the adjacent neighbour to the east from the rear of the site. And another photo shows the view from the ground level and the side boundary, looking across the site, across the public right of way to the adjacent neighbour to the east. As you can see from this photo, when you're at ground level, due to land level changes in the site, the existing side boundary treatment obstructs the view of the adjacent neighbour's garden. And this slide shows photos of the relationship with the adjacent neighbour to the west from both the front and the rear of the site. Go back to the site layout plan. As set out in the report, the proposed development is acceptable in principle, being a replacement dwelling in the settlement confines of Kingstown. The proposal, whilst larger than the dwelling to be replaced, is considered to be compatible with the surrounding built environment and land levels of this part of Upper Street for good quality design and would be comfortably accommodated in the street scene. It is acknowledged that the development would have a greater impact on the residential amenities of adjacent neighbours than the existing bungalow. However, the impacts are not considered to be unacceptable, with relevant conditions of securing obscured raising of necessary windows and a condition requiring details of the noise levels of the air source heat pumps to be provided and approved prior to the installation. The proposal is considered to have an acceptable impact on highway safety and amenity, with suitable access and parking provision, and includes a construction management plan, which is mindful of minimising the temporary construction impacts upon the local highway network and adjacent neighbours. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in all other material respects, and it's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to necessary safeguarding conditions and a valid unilateral undertaking to secure the self-build provision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker to object to this application and a speaker to support the application. And if Mr. Nicholas Hanson could come forward, please.
Thank you very much, Chancellors and officers. I've got four heads of objection. The first is the view. There have been several objections arising out of the threat to the view. The representation at 241 of the Planning Officer's report cites the oft-repeated incantation relied on as gospel by developers that loss of a view is not a material consideration. This is incorrect in this case. The views concerned are public views, which contribute to the character and landscaping of Upper Street and are part of the public realm experience and relate to the setting of a heritage asset, namely the church spire. As such, the obliteration of these views by the construction of this oversized building must certainly justify a valid and good objection. The difficulty could be resolved by moving the proposed building back on the site southwards towards High Banks, away from Upper Street. There's plenty of room to do this, by 7 to 10 metres. Second, the overbearing nature of the building and its adverse effects on Tandridge Rise, the neighbouring property on the seaside. The proposed building will tower over that house, making for an oppressive and overbearing dominance, causing overshadowing, loss of privacy and light, and make the outlook from that property's first floor west facing window restricted, dark and bleak. This would be resolved by moving the proposed building as I described earlier, i.e. towards the back of the plot. Thirdly, there are roof lights shown on the drawings, seeming to indicate an intention to develop the roof space. Therefore, the relevant permitted development classes A, B and C should be removed if the councillors are minded to grant this application. Fourthly, road access. In the construction and management plan, the first assertion, without detail or evidence, is made that there exists a right-of-way of a private road. Carfrae has a right-of-way over the stretch of roadway from Upper Street alongside the first part of its property of approximately 12 metres in length and no more. As is well known to the applicants, there is no right-of-way over the roadway serving the 6 houses to the west of Carfrae. Under the roadway run services, gas, water and drains, which are not laid in a way that supports heavy vehicles. Likewise, they have no right-of-way over the roadway to the south, serving the 3 houses there. Neither the applicants nor their contractors or suppliers are permitted to use these roadways. I would ask that the lack of right-of-way be noted on the construction and management plan as a condition of plan permission and not merely as an unenforceable informative.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Mrs. Rachel Humber to come forward, please?
Good evening, Chairman and members. My name is Rachel Humber and I'm a town planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Irvine. The proposal before you tonight is for a new family dwelling for the applicant and their 2 young children. Mrs. Irvine is an architect and has spent a significant amount of time designing a home which not only suits the forever needs of her family, but also one which will be a positive addition to the village. The proposal is for a self-build replacement dwelling, and as such it would not intensify or change the established residential use of the site. Members will note that the dwelling is set well back from the road and screened by retained landscaping. Its height is modest for a 2-storey property and aligns with neighbouring buildings on comparable ground levels. Importantly, due to its separation from the conservation area and its setback from Upper Street, officers are satisfied that there will be no harm to the setting or appearance of the conservation area. While the new dwelling is larger than the existing bungalow, its scale, proportions and siting have been carefully designed to sit comfortably within a street scene and to respond to the changing levels along Upper Street. Importantly, the proposed dwelling is proportionate to the size of the plot, allowing it to sit comfortably within its generous curtilage without appearing cramped or overdevelopment. The design itself is straightforward and high quality, using traditional forms and materials that respond positively to local character. The retention of boundary hedging, the proposed landscaping and the discrete arrangement of ancillary structures further ensure the development will be visually assimilated into its surroundings. In terms of residential amenity, the proposal has been tested carefully against its neighbours. Whilst the replacement dwelling is larger, separation distances, roof design and land level changes have been fully considered. Officers conclude that there would be no unacceptable harm in terms of light outlook, privacy or overbearing impact. The applicant agrees to the appropriate conditions, such as obscured glazing, to safeguard neighbouring amenity. Highway matters have also been thoroughly assessed. The replacement dwelling would not increase traffic movements and revised access arrangements would improve safety and functionality. Parking provision complies with KCC standards and a construction management plan has been provided to minimise temporary disruption during the construction phase. Ecology, flood risk and sustainability matters have all been addressed and are capable of being secured by condition. The proposal meets modern standards for accessibility, water efficiency and space standards, ensuring good level conditions for future occupiers. It is submitted that this proposed new family dwelling accords with the development plan. There are no material considerations that would justify withholding permission. I therefore respectfully ask that you support the officer recommendation to grant planning permission, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and your time this evening. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to come back just on the permitted development point that the objector raised. So we are suggesting a condition to remove some permitted development rights in the interest of sort of the visual amenity and impact on the adjacent neighbours in any case, which would likely include Class A, Class B and Class E, which is extensions and alterations to dwelling houses, additions to the roof slope and outbuildings. But also it's relevant to note that the roof is very low. So this is actually this dashed line here indicates the ceiling height of the first floor. So there wouldn't be scope for an additional floor to be provided within the roof slope because the ridge height is so low it wouldn't be possible to accommodate it. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. This is before the committee. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. This application satisfies SP4. Some objectors have stated that this property would be too large and not in keeping with the surrounding properties. But I note that there are some large properties nearby, and if you look at that picture, it's dwarfed by the one behind it. So I move that we accept the officer's recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Back. I have 3 councillors awaiting. Councillor Cronk is first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a key points. Yeah, the overdevelopment. It looks like that big building there, overdevelopment, which is having been said. And also the heat pump. We've got a condition put in for that as well. The only thing that concerns me is the access point into where it is, because that's a private area around there, access point getting into the actual building, and the HGV impact of lorries going into that area. And also with the waste bins, with the HGV getting into there to get to the bins, that has an impact on there. And is this the bins or recyclable bins to all the different things? Thank you, Chairman.
So just to respond to your comments, in terms of the private access, yes, the site is accessed via private access. So this is the public road Upper Street, and then this is the private access road. So the application site has rights of access over this. My understanding is this stretch of access road to enable it to access the development site, so that is established, and that has been considered as part of the assessment of the application. In terms of HGVs and larger vehicles, the applicant has provided a construction management plan which is mindful of the impacts of those sort of vehicles and seeks to serve the construction and development with smaller construction vehicles, which I believe would be able to sort of say reverse up the existing private access and pull into the space that they've provided with the offset to the gated access there. In terms of refuse collection, there would be no real material change to the existing refuse collection because obviously there's already a dwelling in this location and it's a replacement dwelling, so the existing waste arrangement will remain the same. But they have provided refuse storage here, which has sufficient scope for both recycling and just standard waste, etc.
Can I come back, Chairman?
Yes, Councillor.
I'd like to second the proposal, if I may, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Williams, Councillor Bates and then Councillor Kenton, and after that we'll go to the vote.
Thank you. It's really about the construction management plan. I wondered if that could be tidied up a bit, please. I mean, the existing one says the applicant has an established right of way over the private road. I think that needs tidying up. It's only about the beginning, as you've pointed out, of the private road going up the hill. And there's also a little lane that's at the bottom of your picture that goes parallel to Upper Street in front of the 3 pairs of semi-detached houses. That's right there. Now that lane belongs to is owned by each of the properties, each owning the little bit in front of their house. It isn't a common lane. It's each little bit own it, and there's an exit way onto Upper Street a little bit further up. I'm concerned that the lorries don't try to go down there. So I'd like that clarified in the construction management plan, please.
So the applicant will be aware, obviously, of the existing access arrangements, and I would expect they would advise the construction vehicles of that. But there is scope, if you wanted to, for the construction management plan to be updated to just clarify those factors, if you would like.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the construction management plan also, because looking through the objections that have been raised, the majority seem to be on the construction management issues around this particular application. There is a section in it which says that no articulated lorries or large HGVs will access the site unless unavoidable and pre-approved. I'm just wondering what the process is for it to be pre-approved. Who grants that approval and how do they obtain it? And also the construction management plan is at present only an informative. So how can residents complain if it's not being complied with, and what will happen when they do? I mean, would it not be more appropriate in this instance? I know it's not normally the policy of planning to do it, but they can do it, to make this a condition rather than an informative. So if things do go badly in terms of the construction, that would enable affected residents to have resource to planning enforcement action if it was being significantly violated. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think from what we've heard tonight, the construction management plan is clearly one of the main concerns of members, and I think sort of listening to that, I don't think there's any concern particularly with having that as a condition. The only thing I would sort of caution is that we have to make sure that any construction management plan that is enforceable. So we can't do things like control public access to public roads, but what we can do is maybe sort of, again, listening to what members have said, ask that an updated plan is submitted and approved, and that details how the developer, or the applicant in this case, will liaise with their suppliers to make sure that the impacts are minimised as much as possible.
Sorry, going back to Councillor Bates's point about how if there are issues that neighbours or whatever wish to bring to our attention, how will that be? Thank you. Councillor Kenton.
Well, thank you, Chairman. The issues I were going to raise have already been answered, but while I'm here, I will just say, and I don't think I should really comment because it was designed by an architect, but I just think that the side elevations for me are clumsy, and that's the only issue I had with it. I just thought, it's not mine, but it's not for me to comment. You know, it's not bad enough to fail, it's good enough to pass, say, in my personal eyes, and all my questions have been answered. I'm happy to go.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a proposition before us, if I could ask our Democratic Services Officer to read it to us.
Thank you, Chairman. There is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded, and that's in accordance with the report recommendation, but with an amendment which would see the construction management plan conditioned rather than as an informative. If you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain.
Apologies. Councillor Cronk has his hand up.
Now, asking our proposal if we can propose that, please.
My apologies. Councillor Bates has suggested an addition, and my apologies to both proposer and seconder. So Councillor Back and Councillor Cronk, if you could care to agree or not to that.
Well, I'd like to ask Luke, I mean, obviously you were happy with an informative. How desperate are we to put a condition on then?
I think so.
You know what's going to happen
as officers, we've looked at this, and I think we've assessed that based on a small scale of it, it wouldn't probably necessitate a condition. because it is something that is a small scale, it wouldn't involve a lot of vehicle movements. However, as decision makers, if you consider that that is of sufficient impact that it warrants a condition, and you consider it to be necessary and therefore meets the tests, then it would be in your gift to include that as a condition. So
I'm just a bit concerned because we never normally ask for a condition on a single property. So I'm quite happy with that, how it was. I don't know about Councillor Cronk.
Councillor Cronk? I have Councillor Kenton.
Whether putting a condition will be enforceable. If the road out the front is a highway, we can't enforce on that. And if the road to the side is a private road, we can't really enforce on that, can we, if it's a private road? So aren't we, it'll be unenforceable. So leaving it as an informative probably would be better, wouldn't it? Well, that's what we want.
Councillor Bates, given what Councillor Back and Cronk have suggested, I'm going to propose that we carry on with the original proposition, and you are entitled, of course, to vote against it if you wanted that amendment. And I think we should proceed in that way.
I'll start again. There is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded, and that is in accordance with the report recommendation. If you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion, and if you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain. Can I ask Gemma to start the vote and for members to cast their electronic vote? We have 7 votes in favour of the motion to approve and 3 against. So that motion has been carried and the application has been approved.
Thank you. We now come to agenda item 7, which is the application number 26/00134, the Orchard Bungalow in Ash.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for the erection of a stable extension. This slide shows the site location plan and the satellite imagery of the site. So the existing stable is located to the corner here, and then this is the associated paddocks with the stable. Here is the existing and proposed site layout plan, and the proposed elevations and the proposed floor plan. As you can see, the extension is a moderate size, just over half the width of the existing stable building, but it will follow the built parameters of the existing stable building, finishing materials to match, and will be a moderate scale. Here are some photos of the existing stable building. So this photo shows the stable building with its gated access to the front, a closer up view. And another view, I think this is from the east, looking towards the stable building. As you can see, it is screened by quite a lot of vegetation and sort of established trees and vegetation surrounding it. This is a further eastward view of the site, with the paddocks in the foreground and the stable building just here. A further photo from the access, looking down the paddocks, the opposite side, and a view of the western portion of the paddock. As set out in the report, the proposed development is acceptable in principle, being an ancillary addition to the existing equestrian structure and land use. The proposed extension will form a moderate and cohesive addition to the existing stable building, which is not considered to be detrimental to the character and appearance of the area, countryside and landscape. The extended stable building will be conditioned to host no more than 2 Shetland ponies or 1 horse in the interest of horse welfare, given the size of the associated paddock. The storage and disposal of manure will adhere to the approved arrangement through condition free of the original consent for the stable building. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in all other material respects and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no speakers for this. So before going to Councillor Cronk, I'm going to Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. Ash Parish Council have no objection. None of the public objections state any reasons for refusal. So I move to accept the officer's recommendation to grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cronk?
Yes, Chairman, I have no problem with this. I'll go out to second it. It's no problem with me.
We have a proposition before us, so I wonder whether our Democratic Services Officer could read that.
Thank you, Chairman. There is a motion to approve the application which has been seconded in accordance with the report. If you wish to approve the application, you should vote for the motion. If you do not wish to approve the application, you should vote against the motion or abstain. If I can ask you to cast your votes, please. That we have 10 votes in favour of the motion, so that motion has been carried and the application has been approved.
Can I thank all our committee members and our super subs, and wish you all a very good evening, and to those who've been listening on the broadcast, thank you everyone. The meeting is concluded. I would like to wish everyone a good evening, officers and members and all those watching. Please could I ask Democratic Services to end the meeting broadcast and to confirm when this has been